Swaziland is a small kingdom in southern Africa with relatively little natural resources, yet the economic results have been quite impressive, from going from Nigerian levels in the 2000s to now approaching North African levels. Of course, the reason for this rapid growth is there was a big AIDS pandemic, which pushed down the Human Development Index quite a lot. And as that's been solved, the Human Development Index has shot up rapidly. Actual GDP growth is less impressive than the out of context Human Development Index. However, there has been a lot of infrastructure development. There has been dual carriageway highways connecting the major cities and airports, and I think they plan to extend that all the way to Mozambique. And of course, the capital of Mozambique is close to Swaziland, and Swaziland is in a customs union with South Africa. So, despite its small size, it's well positioned for export, and it's building a lot of infrastructure. So compared to other countries in Africa, the infrastructure in Swaziland is quite good. However, ignoring the King's A340, the air connection is pretty lackluster with only 2 regional jetliners. But of course, for broader international travel, well connections with South Africa can be used. And the highways are impressive for small African countries. And of course, they do have some limited railways. And the cities are receiving quite a lot of modern developments that look impressive and new. However, Swaziland has learnt from history and is trying to avoid the complete urbanization of its small rural country by taking advantage of its superior infrastructure and high electrification rate by spreading out factory shells all over the country, meaning that the main cities won't become too big, and it's just better for the country. And I think that's really smart and a great lesson from history. An example of Swaziland taking advantage of its good infrastructure is the Swaziland International Conference Centre, built in the middle between its 2 major urban centres, and its world-class facilities. If you look at the pictures of the interior, it's very luxurious, very impressive building for such a small African country. Looks like something that would not be out of place in Dubai. It's just an impressive building, and it's built in like a relatively regional or rural city next to its capital, and I think that's quite interesting. Swaziland, like Australia, has its capital in between its 2 major cities, and because the country is so small, it's within a regional driving distance. Of all the black African countries, Swaziland is one of the best performing countries, and that's despite not having large amounts of natural resources to exploit. And the reason for these successes, I think, is quite obvious. It's because of their king, Mswati III. Swaziland is a constitutional diarchy, but the king has the most power, and he is the undisputed leader of the country. Swaziland, as a monarchy, has a king whose children will inherit the throne. And Mswati III isn't anyone special. He received, by international standards, no special education, yet he has performed very well, becoming king at just 18 years of age, taking over from his father, who had been king since the Victorian age. Swaziland's unique system of an elective kingdom where a young person is made king, well, that has created a lot of stability, and Swaziland is one of the few monarchies which survive colonialism. Swaziland, of all the African countries, I think is the most pre-colonial, and yet it's not run by an anti-colonialist third world Marxist, and as such, because of its economically liberal and responsible government, has succeeded very well, and I think more African countries should be like Swaziland. This video compared to my other videos have been of high quality. That is because I've recently got a new iPad with extra storage, and I say new, it's actually a second-hand model. It's because it's a iPad mini 5th generation, just like my previous iPad, but this has 256 gigabytes. As such, I now have the space to actually make videos.